and then you can scoot out.
Yeah,
thanks,
no worries.
Ariana.
All right, we're doing it now.
Okay, we have probably an audience of 0, but we're complying, so we are live on YouTube stream for anybody who sees our meeting on the website, on the Town of New Paltz.
Dan, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello, Judy.
Okay. Hi. Is there any way to know who's there with you?
You can click participants on the bottom of your screen, and it shows everybody who's there. So what we'll do is
screen, he said.
Yeah, but if you're on this is on the phone. There it is. Participants. There you go.
Yeah.
And there's the people who are there. Okay. And then you can close chat. And then you can, that's where you know. And then there's a thing that says view.
Okay, I see participants.
So we have a good turnout. And what we'll do is
there's also something that
let me just mute you, Judy, for a second.
Okay.
I can. Are you good now, Judy?
I can hear you, but
okay. If you're talking in the background, you probably should just mute yourself so that we can't all hear that background conversation. But the complexities of live video.
No, I've just had my live-in helper there. But,
awesome.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. So It looks like Janelle Klepner, Michael, and Tim Rogers.
Yeah, I'll do the intros. Well, so that'll be one of the first things we do. So so what we'll do is start with just a quick introduction of everybody. Let me see if I can mute Judy. I think I have the power, but maybe I don't. Okay, I don't. So, and then we'll get to some of the agenda after that. It's a lighter agenda than our daunting, massive, we just got through a ton of updates at the very least, and kind of keeping tabs on things in our last meeting, which you can see if you look at the minutes. Before I forget though, one thing we are supposed to be doing every time we meet is approving the minutes from the previous meeting. So we tend not to do things by vote or overly officially. So anybody have any beef with us approving the minutes from last meeting on November? Nope. Hearing none, minutes have been approved. If any of you have any issues that you need to take a look at, we can do that retroactive. So we tend to go from an hour and a half, from 7 to 8:30, try to respect that. I know I have to put my daughter to sleep right around then. So I intend to be done around then myself. So a few things that we'll be getting to, just to let you know what's coming for tonight. One of them is, which is one of the reasons, or maybe the reason why Kitty joined in tonight, is some concern about protecting a vegetative buffer with the proposed detour path of the Empire State Trail behind the Trans-Hudson development, should that development go through. The current plans kind of call for the bike path being part of destruction of a buffer rather than a complement to a vegetative forested buffer between the Trans-Hudson project and the Thruway. So that's one of the items we'll talk about. Another item that Michael brought up was a request to write a letter to the Department of Transportation to stop having right on red around intersections where the Empire State Trail comes through New Paltz. And Judy's been active with trying to get updates about the slow pace and kind of nudging to speed up the pace of the shoulder construction from Butterville to the Brow House at 4455 on Route 299. And then Judy brought up a request for us to be a part of planning a local version of on April 24th, Celebrate Trails Day. I'm going to try not to share my screen any more than I have to, but the minutes are available on a link on the Google Calendar appointment. So if any of you want to open up the minutes, you can. If any of you want me to share my screen, I can. But it's more fun for us to look at each other's faces than to have that deterring. So those are some of the items, and we can shortly see if any of you have any other items to add. Hello, Bill Weinstein. Nice to see your smiley face. So speaking of smiley faces, let's just start by, we'll try to be really quick. It's easy to let this take up too much of the meeting, but I know I want to welcome Shauna, who responded to one of those messages that goes out. I believe you saw it on a message that went out in the New Paltz Times or elsewhere, soliciting more members of various town committees and boards. Is that how you saw about us, Shauna?
I received an email that says looking for volunteers, and
Excellent.
I sent an inquiry in.
Wonderful. Yes, so the town and the village, I think especially the town, but maybe the village also from time to time send out these email solicitations, and they also put it in the newspaper every week. And so sometimes we get what gets called in telemarketing a cold call, a nice interest from someone not a friend of a friend or not connected. So Shauna's checking us out tonight. I already kind of told Shauna some of the scoop, which is, you can attend any of our meetings any of the time. You don't have to be a member. There's several people out in attendance tonight who are not members. You can be super active and officially not be a member, like our very own Michael Reed, the Rebel, or you can join on board, and then you get some fun perks or some fun hoops to jump to, like swearing an oath and giving some financial statement that you have no conflict of interest with the massive power that we have on this committee. But in any case, for now, it's you're checking us out, and so welcome. And since we do have you as a new person, and Kitty is joining as an advocate, and Bill used to be the chair of the committee, so we do have some folks who are not. And Lou, we haven't seen Lou in a while, but welcome. So let's just do a super quick. Each of us just go and just say our name and one quirky thing about yourself that you care to share that may or may not be related to Bike Ped. Mark, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Mark Ice. I am a town resident and member of the Bike Ped Committee, and I work in the live event industry. So it's been a quiet year.
Very quiet year. Lou, you want to go?
Sure. My name is Lou Klepner. I love biking around town with my kids, one of which just burped in the background, excuse him. And I'm a software engineer, and moved up to New Paltz about 18 months ago from downstate. But I grew up from Westchester, but I grew up in Dutchess County, so no stranger to the Hudson Valley.
Excellent. Kitty?
Hi, everybody. I founded the Wallkill Valley Land Trust in 1989, and our second project was the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail, which was a huge effort with tremendous support from local residents and local businesses. And we were thrilled when it was identified as one leg of the new Empire State Trail. And so I'll leave it there.
Well, thanks for sharing that history, and thanks for all you've done for a long, long time. Way before I ever knew what New Paltz was.
It's 50 years. I just realized I've lived here for 50 years.
You should throw a big old party once.
Yeah, and I came for a weekend.
Nice. Shauna, you want to say a word about yourself?
Yes, I was also a weekender, and I moved to New Paltz March of last year, initially because of COVID, but it's just wonderful biking around. And when I saw the volunteer opportunities and several boards were open, it was a no-brainer to write to the Bike Ped Committee. So thanks for having me tonight.
Excellent. Well, welcome. Michael? I'm going in order of my Hollywood squares, so it might not look chaotic to you.
A longtime bicyclist, former president of the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail Association. I'd say a founding member of the Rebel Trail Alliance, and hope to continue to make contributions here and elsewhere for bicycle safety.
Be able to see the speaker for now.
Awesome. Any final things, or was that?
That's pretty much it.
Wasn't sure if you got cut out by the bell there.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
It's Judy. Judy's got all kinds of sounds.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks. Janelle.
Yes, hi. I'm Janelle Piotr, and I'm trying to think how long I've been a member of the Bike Ped Committee, a couple years. And I've been a volunteer coordinator for New Paltz Climate Smart for several years now. And I really saw the intersection of my interest in silent sports and biking with pedestrian safety and wanting complete streets, all related to the effort to have New Paltz become more climate smart. And I'd like to personally have a shout out to Shauna. I'm really glad that you joined us tonight, and I hope that we inspire you to stay, because more is better right now. And just wanted to welcome you to the community. I've only been here 6 years, less than 6 years. So I'm a newbie compared to most people on this call.
Thank you.
Bill Weinstein is next up on my queue.
Okay, well, I'm usually a professional lurker on this list, and Kitty called me today and talked to me about Trans Hudson and said there'd be a presentation, and I said, okay, I'll sit in and hear what's going on. I did chair the committee for maybe 6 years, quite some time ago already. And I love bicycling. I did 2 centuries last year. And this morning I went bicycling in Australia. And I did 2 stages of the Tour de France in the last couple of days. So, you know, computers are sometimes useful. And
pretty impressive for a 45-year-old.
I know. Well, you know, I'm older than Jack Benny, but that illusion also dates me. I see Judy is smiling.
He's a little older than 45, but I won't tell you his real age.
So anyway, it's a pleasure to see all of you, and I hope to learn something useful, because I recently I should say this too. I write letters to the newspaper, and I was asked by Dan Schniedewind to weigh in about the Trans Hudson project, and I realized that I did not in the paper as much as to the town board. And I realized that I didn't really know enough to make an opinion, really express an opinion, like put my name to it. And did a little research among people, and then Kitty spoke to me at length about it and today. So maybe I'll learn something useful that will involve me in that in some way. So
excellent. Well, we'll get there soon. Let's just introduce a few more people, and then we'll try to get to some of that business. Ariana, who is the assistant to the mayor, was on our meeting, helped me set up the live streaming that that nobody's probably watching. But if you are watching, hello there. We're all here. And once Ariana finally left for that purpose, now I am the master in control. So I did mute Judy, and I'm going to unmute Judy in a second. And before I unmute her, I just want to toot her horn. Some of you saw that that our outgoing state senator, Jen Metzger, issued an award at the state legislative level for service to Judy on a cold, snowy day outside of Elting Library that Bill and Janelle and I and maybe some others of you were at. And it was an award probably primarily because of her work with the Minnewaska Long Distance Swimmers Association, with pushing for getting swimming approved at Minnewaska, but also certainly bicycle pedestrian leadership was a major part of it. So congratulations to Judy. Again, I want to keep everything really brief if we can, just kind of introduce and one quick thing about yourself so we can get to our meeting, but I'm going to unmute you and just let you if I can unmute you, it's saying ask to unmute. Are you getting a note to unmute yourself, Judy? There you go. Okay. If you just want to say one other thing about yourself besides what I introduced, so we can keep it quick and keep it going, but congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a frustrated grandmother, but I have to say that my grandson learned to ride a two-wheeler at age 4. And that was a highlight of the year. But he's in Switzerland, and there's more places for kids to bike there in his small city.
Yes.
It's inspiring, his small city. That's it.
All right. Well, welcome. Judy has been on the committee longer than any of us, I believe, by far. And it's so great to continue to have you serving on the committee. I see Tim and I believe it's Neil there. If you guys are multitasking, no worries. But Tim, if you're there, do you want to introduce yourself for a second?
Yeah, sure. I'm Tim Rogers, Village Mayor. I really enjoy our community because I think it's one of the rare communities where you can really use your car a whole lot less by walking or riding bikes. So, you know, it might be almost as good as Judy's kids spot there in Switzerland.
Awesome. Yes. And grateful that you're taking the time. I'm sure you and Neil are zoomed out often, and it's never an expectation that you guys are on our meetings, but it's certainly something I appreciate. And is that you, Neil, dialed in on the phone?
Yes, it is. This is Neil Bates, Town Supervisor. It's a lot easier to zoom into these calls if I can go for a walk, because I really enjoy walking.
I love that about you.
It helps with a lot of different levels of stress. But I wanted to say I'm a little scared about walking on the rail trail because of the roving gangs that we have on it. Maybe Kitty could talk about that. You guys know I'm joking, right?
Yes, I do.
A great moment in New Paltz public hearing history.
Fears of neighbors of rail trails, I presume, whose
yes,
fears did not quite pan out.
When the Walker Valley Rail Trail was proposed, one of the big arguments against it was that we would have to hire additional police officers because there would be gangs that preyed upon people and walked around the rail trails at night. And I don't think that has come to be. I think it actually has made New Paltz, as Kitty said, we would not have the Empire Trail coming through here if the Walker Valley Rail Trail was not already here. So we were ahead of the curve, and I would like to push the Bike Ped Committee to continue to push the town and the village in the right direction. I think that the history behind the River to Ridge is also connected to the Bike Ped Committee. So a lot of what we have, I think, is because of strong advocacy on this committee's part, and I encourage you to continue to advocate for safer and better bike ped facilities. I think that's how we're going to address climate change locally, and I think that's also how we're going to make this a more, a nicer place to live for people of every, age and class.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
I appreciate hearing those, the sort of message of you make a difference, because I can just say for myself, when I first joined the committee in 2013, it was a bit despondent. It was a little bit of a bummer. People were just really understandably frustrated at the slow pace of change. And it is a common thread with this committee that there's often frustration, not always, but usually directed at the New York State Department of Transportation, and about slow pace of change. So it is really very much valued to hear from people on the inside the difference that our group on the outside can make over the course of years. The
other thing, we have a new leader in Washington.
Right.
Mayor Buttigieg is a big advocate of complete streets. I posted some stuff about that. I think that there's going to be a change, hopefully, over the next 4 years from the top down. And I think if we have it from the bottom up, I expect good things.
Hear, hear. Yes. The first thing I want to do just before we jump in is especially for Tim and Neil to just see if there's anything updated or anything else that you wanted to add to talk about. If not, you can just chime in about, you know, the items that are on our agenda. Not hearing any, so I'll assume from Mayor and Supervisor there's not any, but if so, just chime on in. And then the final, just half serious, but more patting on the back item is just, we are supposed to get snow tomorrow, and one of my biggest passions in the world is Nordic skiing, cross-country skiing. And there was a nice story that Aaron Quinn did in a pull-out of the New Paltz Times this past week that did include a couple quotes of Neil and me about cross-country skiing on the rail trail, especially, excuse me, on the River to Ridge Trail. So that is another form of non-motorized transportation that is not often as life or death crucial as biking and walking and wheelchair, you know, movement, but it is an important one also in New Paltz. So let's get to some of the agenda. We usually don't take quite this much time, but especially with a new person and a bunch of non-members who have, you know, jumped in from time to time, I wanted to be human and welcome everybody. So the first item, as is often lurking on our agenda, is this proposed project by the company called Trans Hudson, but more commonly known in New Paltz as the CVS Pharmacy / probably Five Guys fast food, semi-fast food chain, you know, development up by the Thruway on North Putt and Main Street, otherwise known as 299. And so the particular issue at hand is that the developer Trans Hudson is, or did, kind of agree to put into the plans, should they be approved by New Paltz, to have the Empire State Trail, instead of only kind of going down Main Street and taking a right on North Putt, instead have it go behind the proposed stores. In other words, kind of avoid some of the dangers of being on two high traffic roads and kind of going back by the tree line. Not the most beautiful area. The Thruway is very noisy and is right there. But the idea would be to kind of have a safer way for the bicyclist portion of the Empire State Trail to go behind on a path that that Trans Hudson would build, if I understand correctly. And there was some talk about perhaps some bathrooms and some dedicated parking spaces. But the latest was that some of the environmental leaders in the area have expressed concerns that about the place where the bike path and the way the bike path is being proposed would be involve chopping down more trees than are necessary and having the path be in what should be a forested buffer, instead of keeping the buffer and having the path next to it. So I know Ingrid has been very active with this, and Kitty too. So before I turn it over to Kitty and to you know, and perhaps Neil and Tim and others, I just wanted to own that Kitty asked me as acting chair to write a letter to zoning and planning boards and include mayor, supervisor, and village trustees and town board. And because of what I thought was a pressing deadline to do it before the end of today, I kind of just made an executive decision to just write it and submit it. I would have much preferred to have that be an action item for our group today, but the stakes seemed low enough. I didn't think I would be pissing off any of the members by doing so. And I also, I was kind of expecting, and I was looking forward to hearing from our mayor and supervisor, you know, and I did hear from Neil, and you can chime in, explain more, Neil, but Neil wrote me privately and said, it's kind of a done deal. It's the ship, the train has already left the station. The ship has already sailed. So the letter that I'm writing is kind of it's not going to do anything. But Kitty, I think, disagrees with that assessment. So maybe we can, get into a big brawl between Kitty on the outside and Neil on the inside, and maybe Tim. But in any case, that's kind of the background as I know it. So just so people understand what we're talking about, and then I can turn it over to maybe Kitty first, since you're joining about this issue.
Sure. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, members of the Bike Ped Committee. I think there's been a sort of fundamental misunderstanding about the Empire State Trail, and it is finished. It is complete. As far as New York State is concerned, the Empire State Trail is a 750-mile intermodal transportation trail. And you can see the entire route on the maps that I sent you earlier today. Given the historic challenges of getting from east to west and back again in our town, the trail is routed mostly through Henry W. Du Bois and also on North Putt Corners Road. So visitors on the trail who are coming from the east will be on Route 299 on a separated paved bike path. And they will cross the mobile station across from the thruway, which is already a dangerous, in my opinion, intersection. And then the question becomes, how do we get them either down Main Street or down Henry W. Du Bois? And with an eye to the future, I think both the mayor and the supervisor suggested that a safer route would be through the back of the proposed Trans-Hudson development. And there was a plan that originally showed a path going through that was not within the buffer, but went along the back of the site. And there were some concerns about what about parking and safety, and how do we make sure that these visitors aren't too close to vehicular traffic. And that was essentially where the discussion was left until a recent submission by Trans-Hudson, which said, wait a minute, there's a 30-foot buffer that is vegetated. It is required in the town code. And what if we just bulldoze the center of that trail, pave it, and turn over maintenance and liability to the town, and rid our hands of any of the further responsibility of that trail? And I can't really enumerate for you all of the health hazards that cutting down the last remaining vegetated buffer on that site will pose for us. But I did send you all Ingrid Heckel's analysis of that. The buffer does a lot of things that I'm not sure we're all aware of, but I live on Rocky Hill Road, and in the winter, I can hear the thruway. In the summer, it is a constant presence, and that's with 5.5 acres of undisturbed vegetation at the Trans-Hudson site. They've pretty much said that they plan to clear cut the site. So this 30-foot buffer could easily be the last remaining vegetation on that site. The other side of this is that there is plenty of room to put the connector route adjacent to the buffer. It will be paved. Trans-Hudson will already have done all of the excavation, all of the clear cutting. There's no need to do any more of that. And this will actually encourage a lot more business at their fast food, or we don't actually know what businesses are going to go in there now, but visitors will be able to go along a paved trail that will be exactly like the one they've been on 299. It will take them to Henry W. Du Bois, and there are now plans to create a side trail along Henry W. Du Bois, and then they will cross 32 and get onto the Walker Valley Rail Trail. So the short answer is Trans-Hudson would prefer not to have to maintain the trail, but it's very easy for them to do it. And I think if we just encourage them to look at the site again, to place the trail where they are already going to be bulldozing, excavating, grading, filling, and paving, everybody comes out ahead. That's it. Any questions?
Bill.
Kitty, I didn't quite understand the relationship between the buffer you're talking about at the Trans-Hudson site and the noise someone would hear living on Rocky Hill Road, which is on the other side of course, it escapes my mind at the moment, but you know, the other side of the road that intersects 32 where Clarkson's, you know, I mean, Rocky Hill is at a distance from that road. So were you implying that the development at North Putt and, you know, at the Trans-Hudson site would affect noise where you live? Or did I misunderstand?
Yeah, there's no question that once that 5 acres is clear cut, the noise and air pollution for, I'm not sure that you know how far east Rocky Hill Road goes, but all of our roads, Shivertown, Rocky Hill, Henry W. Du Bois, any road that comes out onto North Putt Corners. You know, we all live with the throughway noise. I'm not able to measure or calculate the amount of toxic air pollution, but you know, I can't leave my windows open in the summer if I want peace and quiet. We sit out on the back deck, and in the summer, the throughway is just another unwanted guest.
Okay, and again, I don't mean to monopolize, but unless I misread the diagram, the clearing of trees or whatever it is, it doesn't extend past HW, does it?
Past well, no, that's the end of the site. But Trans-Hudson has pretty much said they intend to clear cut the site. The only remaining vegetation that they're required to keep is that 30-foot buffer. They have been asked to do a tree inventory. There are lots of really spectacular old growth trees there. I mean, you can all see the catalpa in bloom next spring. And I'm sure there are others. I think, in fact, Janelle and Ingrid may have done the part of that inventory. But yeah, clear cutting that site is going to have a tremendous noise and air quality impact on our community. So this last 30 feet of vegetated buffer is really crucial.
Janelle?
I served on the Environmental Conservation Board, and I'm now there as a liaison to Climate Smart, although I'm not officially a member of the board. But I'm very familiar with the immense work that Ingrid Hagel did to research this issue and write about it. And if there is a possible way to save that buffer, I really think we need to. And, you know, I think part of it is that to the letter of the law, it's my understanding with the code enforcement officer, it would be legal to cut it, but is it the right thing to do? If there's a way to prevent it for the sake of health, I think that buffer needs to be retained. To put a trail through the middle of a buffer, it's like 30 feet isn't that far. By the time you put a trail through it, there's nothing left of the buffer.
I just want to add to that although the building inspector said that she doesn't see any legal constraint against going down the middle of the buffer, she also said, I'm not the planning board. The planning board has the final say over whether or not to allow this. And the planning board has been lobbied very heavily by Trans-Hudson, who say this is a very tight site, is what their position is. And it's a tight site because they're trying to cram 5 buildings and a lot of parking and a lot of commercial use. thanks to the town board, they can achieve a lot of that building by building up instead of out. They can build 2 stories of commercial development on that site. So although they claim that it's too tight to put the trail adjacent to the buffer, the fact is if they just take one of their uses and put it on top of another one, they've got lots of room.
Neil, you want to jump
Neil.
in?
Can I? Yeah, I want to weigh in. Like Kitty said, it's a tight site, and so I actually think we don't really have to worry about the trail and the buffer because we're not going to get a trail. We were offered the trail when they were negotiating with the town board for waivers. We denied their waivers because Kitty and others pressured us to do it. So we did not grant the waivers. They do not have to build a trail under the new zoning or the old zoning, sure. So we're currently in a lawsuit with them. If they win the lawsuit, we go back to the old zoning, potentially, unless we can appeal. But there's no guarantee that we're going to get a trail inside or outside of the buffer. And so bicyclists are going to have to make their way past the entrance and the exit, and then they're going to have to ride on North Platte, putting people's lives in danger. Eventually, someone will die. And that is on the people who did not want the trail going behind the project. My opinion is that we need to be...
I guess this is going to turn into a brawl.
I'm just saying, Kitty, my preference is to make the trails as safe as possible. We negotiated with them. They didn't offer to build those trails. And we didn't even ask them to build a trail behind them. DOT and Empire State Trail wanted there.
No, that is not true. Neil, I'm sorry. I have a lot of documents. That is not true. The Empire State Trail did not. Nope.
Kitty, I was in the meetings with them. Tim was in the meetings with them. We met with them and the people from the Empire State Trail. They have always
I have a letter from Andy Beers of the Empire State Trail, and they have no position regarding where that connector trail goes. Now, you may have had a private meeting that the public wasn't privy to, but I have a letter from Andy Beers, who is the executive director of the Empire State Trail, and there is no agreement.
And I've seen that letter. They're not going to take a position on an issue like this. But when we talk to the engineers and the designers and the people on the ground, it's always been a preferred option because it's safe. Now,
which is great.
It's great. I hope it happens in the future. I am doubtful it's going to happen inside the buffer or outside of the buffer because they don't have to do it. It's not required under the zoning. They were doing it because
Neil, as you say, the town has the responsibility for the welfare and safety of its residents and visitors. The planning board does have the power to require a connector route through the plan, and we want to make sure that it's a safe one.
And I hope it is.
We agree.
So, I mean,
they have to make under the new zoning, they have to make accommodations for bikes and peds. That could be sidewalks and bike racks. Under the old zoning, if they win the lawsuit, they don't have to do any of it.
So, to some degree,
I can't give an opinion on the future of the lawsuit, but I do have faith in our planning board that they will look at that route and say, this was a great route. It's safe. It gets people away from that intersection, and you have to put it adjacent to the buffer. The planning board has the power to do that, and we should encourage them to do that.
So some of this, as I kind of jokingly predicted a brawl, some of this is about like looking in the rearview mirror. And, I know in our last meeting, Neil was hoping that the zoning board, if I have it correctly, would approve 2 waivers that Trans Hudson was requesting about only having to build one story, and I forget what the other waiver was about, if it was about
Those were
a drive-through.
Those were to the town board, and we denied them both. So while we were negotiating with them, and if we had not denied those waivers, we as a town board probably could have negotiated with them about where the trail would go, inside or outside of the buffer. We're out of the picture now. So when Dan was saying that the ship has sailed, I think what he means is the town board has no more role in this whatsoever. Our only role was to either grant or deny those waivers. We're now done. It's off to the courts or to the ZBA and then to the planning board.
Okay, so that's the order. It's courts, the courts first, courts and ZBA and the zoning board of appeals first, and the planning board only comes in after that.
I mean, it's up to Trans Hudson. They've already started the lawsuit. They've had it on hold while we were deciding on the waivers. They know we've denied those waivers back in December. It's now in their court. They can decide to move forward with the lawsuit, or they can decide to do what any applicant before the planning board can do when they want a waiver from any zoning regulations. They can go to the zoning board of appeals and make their case and ask for a waiver, and that's up to Trans Hudson. Now the ball's in their court.
So my question is kind of, we can kind of play armchair quarterback and review past political choices made by the town board and all that. But going forward, whether your fears, Neil, pan out, or whether Kitty's hopes, well, I think you both share the same hope. Regardless of which of those two crystal ball scenarios work out, we, through my kind of executive decision, wrote a letter, requesting the buffers be preserved. Kitty and others are continuing to make the case that the buffers be, preserved. And so, the question is, it sounds like right now there's just a lot of outside factors about what Trans Hudson wins or loses in courts and in boards of appeals. But while that process takes its political and legal, plays out in the political and legal process, I guess the question remains, is that, are there things that we as a committee can do that would stab ourselves in the back, or that we should be wary of? Are there things that we as a committee can do that would help make the case for the good life that we all want? So I guess I just wanted to see if we can wrap up this section of our meeting about Trans Hudson and see if there's any action advice and action steps while we're in this limbo phase. Or is this more just about educating ourselves and getting inside scoop to predict where things might go?
The only thing I would want to add, just as a kind of ray of sunshine here, is that when the town board denied the waivers, they also gave Trans Hudson twice as much room to build on that lot. That's what the new zoning does. So I'm very optimistic that the town will prevail if that lawsuit does get all the way to court.
So is there anything beyond the letter that we just wrote, though, that in terms of action items that we as a committee should be doing?
This is Tim. What I don't understand is, aren't the Trans Hudson folks just going before the ZBA, and they've already had a preliminary meeting with the ZBA to get variances, which would be comparable to the waivers? The two waivers that they need, one for a drive-through.
They did go to the ZBA to get the town building inspector to give an interpretation of the town code about whether or not it was permissible to bulldoze the center of the buffer zone. And in the building inspector's opinion, it was, but she revised her initial opinion to say, but I am not the planning board. And the planning board has the final say over whether or not this can go in the buffer. And that was the last meeting was with the ZBA, I think exactly a week ago.
So the ZBA is not deliberating on the request for the two waivers, one for the drive-through and one for the second story. I thought those were the two waivers that the ZBA would opine on.
I'm not aware that those have been presented to the ZBA.
Tim, they are the ones that if Trans Hudson decides to go that route, that is what they would decide. That's what they would be deciding on. I don't know. I don't think that they have submitted anything to the ZBA yet.
Yeah, okay. I saw Steve Esposito the other day in the Village Hall parking lot, and he told me that, you know, he told me that they had already been involved in their review. So I'm not exactly following what Kitty's saying.
Maybe I haven't heard anything official yet. I know they're weighing either going forward with the lawsuit or going with the ZBA. So maybe they are. I haven't heard that they are or not, but maybe they've sent some stuff in that I don't know about.
So my question still kind of remains, is there anything else that we as a committee should be doing other than just trying to educate fellow residents about the in limbo state that we're in and advocating? Janelle asked if I could share the letter, and I'll probably send it by email, or I can, maybe I can post it, a link to it now. But so yeah, that's
Dan. My suggestion would be that the Bike Ped Committee continue doing what they've been doing all along, which is advocating for the safest facilities that we can get.
Right.
Right. And so whether that's inside or outside the buffer, that's, I think, in my opinion, but you guys decide what you want. I just think the role of the Bike Ped Committee is to advocate for bike ped issues.
Bill?
Kitty, I looked through the documents that you sent just now, and what I don't see, because I'm having trouble visualizing it, is what you mean by clear cutting and what you mean by buffer and what the two plans look like side by side, the path going through the vegetation and the path going next to the vegetation. I may be really obtuse about this, and maybe everyone else visualizes it. I cannot. Has someone made such a set of diagrams so that it can be seen?
I would have to go way back, but Trans Hudson did submit a plan probably 3 or 4 years ago that showed the connector route going around the back of the site, not through the buffer. And I should and will try to dig that up and send it to all of you.
Right. Well, because if you part of the point you wanted to make, I'm saying this purely as an observer, I have no vote, is that there were two plans. The path skirted the vegetation. It was off-road, I believe, right? And the other, it went through vegetation or trees. But I can't visualize it, nor do I visualize exactly what the buffer looks like and what the clear cutting looks like. And therefore I don't know what we're actually talking about. And I may be really obtuse about it. I apologize. And if others understand it, maybe they could explain it, or maybe it's a waste of time. But that's where I'm at the moment.
I'm looking at the attachment, Kitty, that's TH-CVS concept plan map.
Yeah.
Is inexplicably a Word document, but it's an image of it looks like it's based on the tree survey, and it has 3 areas that are hash marked in green highlighter. What do those signify in this document?
All right, let me bring that up.
That's a good question. I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this does not look like it has it's not superimposed over the building plan, and it's just this one image, right?
Right.
Of
Well,
the tree
yeah,
surface.
they sent a much longer image. It is just a concept plan. That is all the planning board was given, and Trans Hudson said, this is our concept plan. If you approve it and give us the waiver to go through the buffer, then we will provide you with complete specs and design. At which point Julie Seifert said, wait a minute, there's a lot of what the word is for steep slopes. And you're going to have to do a tremendous amount of grading on the end of the buffer in order to make it ADA compliant. And Trans Hudson said, well, we will show you how we're going to do that, but first we want the waiver.
That's clever. What do the green hash marked areas indicate? Is that what they're proposing to leave for trees, or?
I think that's stormwater retention.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with this buffer that we're talking about.
I don't believe so, and of course I've lost that. Here we go. Let's see if I can find that map. Let's see.
And to Neil's point, I am in agreement that our job as the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee is to advocate, our first job is to advocate for the safety of non-motorized transportation in our town and village. With that, though, are health concerns that go along with that. And so, certainly it is more pleasurable to ride separated from the massive traffic of the thruway by a copse of trees and a natural barrier than it is to ride directly adjacent to that, coupled with the fact that you do get some screening from the fumes and emissions of the thruway if you have a vegetative screen between you and the bike path. So I wouldn't say the two issues are completely divorced in terms of bicycle safety or pleasure of use of the bike path, which is also a concern.
I mean, the problem is that there are several populations in our community that need to be taken into account, and people will be using the Empire State Trail. They will be on Route 299, which is not the most scenic route in the world. They will go through the CVS site one way or the other, and then down a road. And it's not until they get to the Walco Valley Rail Trail that they'll really have the experience of trees and nature and wilderness. But that buffer, that last remaining buffer, is important to the quality of life for other residents of the town. And there's no reason that
this is Tim. Kitty, what I don't understand about this process at all at this point is it seemed like you had leverage to get the buffer that you're describing, but the town board voted against issuing the waivers. So now the ZBA is deciding on whether to issue the waivers.
Right.
So how are you going to get the ZBA to say the granting of the waivers is conditional?
Well, if it goes to the ZBA, we'll have to talk to them.
Before the ZBA.
Well, as of last week, it was
the ZBA doesn't get to negotiate. The ZBA gets to decide whether they grant the waiver or not. The town board had the ability to negotiate. We've given that up.
Right. So this conversation should have happened when, instead of the town board voting against issuing the waivers.
Well, I mean, the conversation did happen, and
now the ship has sailed, and now it's in the hands of the ZBA, who's just
right. I mean, but we always knew that.
And you always knew. Okay.
But we always knew that would be the outcome. That Trans Hudson said, we want 3 waivers. If we don't get them, we're suing you. And it certainly was not. There was never a moment when it made sense to throw away all the years that it took to design the gateway zoning and essentially to be extorted into granting waivers. The town has given Trans Hudson double the amount of commercial space that they had prior to the zoning. And
If we
you know,
lose the
that-
lawsuit, we have thrown away all those years of doing the rezoning, because we will lose the zoning for the entire gateway. And
only
that's been my fear all along.
right. And you've expressed that fear, but you know, we had the same fear with the wetlands law. We were sued twice and we won. And I think this law is even just as strong as the wetlands law, and I think you'll prevail.
If you don't mind, I think I would like to have us kind of make an executive
Yeah.
decision and have us move on to.
Okay.
And
Thank you
the
very
second,
much for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I'm hesitant to move on because I personally really kind of appreciate hearing this back and forth kind of between, broadly speaking, the inside elected officials and the outside advocates. I think it is really, I think it's good for me and it's good for members of the committee to hear these calculations about how taking a strong stance on the right side of the values we all share can sometimes actually stab you in the back, and other times it can push you forward. And so it's not that I want to smack down this discussion. It's just that I think it's probably run its course. I think you know, we kind of know what we need to do, and a lot of this is now kind of looking in the rearview mirror and predicting in the future. And so it is useful in the sense that there may come a time again where we're faced a difficult decision where insiders are advising us not to take a strong outsider stance because they fear that it'll recoil against us, and the outsiders are saying, no, we have to stick with our guns. And so I do think it's a useful and important deliberation to have, and I especially appreciate that that our mayor and our supervisor are strong advocates of bicycle pedestrian matters in terms of both being active cyclists with children and, you know, have their hearts in the right direction. But what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is move to agenda item 2, which is very related, fortunately. So we're still talking about the Empire State Trail, and we're still talking in large part about that same section. But Michael has been mentioning in the past, and then earlier today, Michael explicitly wrote me saying, let's make this an agenda item of trying to advocate that there be no right on red rule, no right on red signaling and signage at some of these intersections that have four-way crosswalks. But in practice, it can be pretty dangerous being a pedestrian or a cyclist, even though there's high-tech, impressive design at North Putt and Main Street. There are many times where it seems like you're clear to cross on bicycle or walking, but a car seemingly has an ability to take a right. And it's so, and you could say a little bit more if you want, you know, Michael, about strategy of the letter or about your concerns.
I can just say that I have been riding from New Paltz to Poughkeepsie quite regularly. In fact, even before the Empire State Trail was even there. And now there's this illusion that it's somewhat safer because you can press a button and you're going to get a walk sign to cross the street. When in reality is the cars that are making those right on reds just blow right through there. And I've almost gotten hit more times since the rail trail has now put in those buttons than before, for whatever reason.
Since the Empire Trail.
Since the Empire State Trail has been created. And without having, or with right on red, there's actually never a safe time to cross the street because cars can go right through the red light, and which is what happens. So people just blow right through it.
Even if you press the pedestrian signage and
they're not even looking at you. I mean, they just blow right through because they can go through a red light. I mean, that's what right on red really means. I mean, people don't come to a stop much more than they come to a stop at places like, I don't know, Shivertine and 32, another place I ride past every day, and cars just roll right through that stop sign.
Now, just as I see Mike, I think Mark might have a question too, but just before, let me just jump in first. So I no longer live over by Cherry Hill, but for 10 years I lived in the Cherry Hill neighborhood, and I was often biking from the Tops Plaza Diner, and crossing to go back to True Value, Pasquale's to go home. And the cars often coming out of Tops would have a red note right on red, a red arrow saying no right on red. But they would sometimes do it anyway. But there was noise. The crosswalk signal, there's a beep when you have the signal. So is it the same at North Putt, where if you press a pedestrian crosswalk sign, does it pop up and it doesn't pop up a no right on red arrow there? Or does it?
There's no arrow there.
I don't think so.
There's no arrow at all. Okay.
There's a left turn arrow, but not a right turn arrow.
I mean, much worse, they've actually added this for the left.
Yellow flashing.
This flashing, which nobody knows what that means. Does that mean the oncoming traffic is about to stop or about to go?
It just means
your life depends on it. Which one does it?
It just means you can take a left when it's safe.
Oncoming traffic to make your right turn. That's
it's a left turn.
No, this is to make the
this is the left turn
or the left turn.
It flashing yellow.
Yeah, because the other people have a green. They have green. It's not a protected left turn then. So it's so you have to.
Most drivers don't know that.
It is a little wacky. What I was going to say is that currently, Michael, if I'm correct about this, this really only applies in 2 places. Correct? It applies at that intersection of Main Street and Putt Corners, and it will apply when the light is installed at the new Stewart's intersection.
Well, no, I would further extend it to Ohio, South Ohioville, North Ohioville, that intersection, and also South Street where Lowe's is. Because I ride through all 3 of them, and it's the same problem at each intersection. Whether you're going straight as you would on, once you've crossed at Ohioville and you're now on the south side of 299, you're going to be heading across south.
So Ohioville is still us, right? But by the time you get to Lowe's, you're now in town of Lloyd, aren't you?
Yes.
Out of our beat.
Well, requesting it as a matter of safety throughout the system. Let me just point out that DOT made all the changes in Kingston where there's been a recent fatality, and they never made their changes known to any of the community groups within the city of Kingston. So nobody, even the Complete Streets people, never saw any plans. The Bike Friendly Kingston saw no plans. The city of Kingston admitted they really hadn't seen nor signed off on the plans. And, DOT just did what they wanted. And there's even more disasters up there because they ended up putting rumble stripes right into the bike lane on 32. And they have a bike lane on one side and a sidewalk on the other, and no sharrows to indicate how do you get back on 32. I don't know if anybody knows that intersection where the Stewart's is at, and you're heading at that point south down 32. Suddenly there's a bike lane, and then there's no bike lane. There's a sidewalk. Can you ride on the sidewalk? Well, in the city of Kingston, nobody over the age of 9 is supposed to be riding on the sidewalk, and there's no sharrows. So anyway, DOT has made their own decisions, and the community was not consulted. I'm advocating that we write a letter to them advocating for these changes, i.e. those 2 intersections. And second of all, make it really clear to them that if they don't, they are solely responsible and liable, because the city of Kingston right now is being sued, even though they never signed off on the intersections there.
In the 5 boroughs of New York City, you can't make a right on red, and it is specifically because of the incredibly heavy pedestrian traffic that, that it's unless it's indicated that you may not. Anywhere in the 5 boroughs. So it does make sense to me to advocate for that at these high pedestrian, high bicycle traffic intersections.
There's no right on red at Manheim and at Main Street and 208.
Right.
So we already have it in town.
Right. So just to be clear, is the recommendation for a red right arrow that's added to the street lights, or B, old school signs that say no right on red, or C, both of the above?
That sounds good.
Both sound good.
And is there any other technological option that you'd be that could signal this besides, or are those are the two things we'd be asking for? Is there anything about sort of syncing the pedestrian audio beeping and talking and what the pedestrian white pedestrian person crossing?
I don't see how that, it's the driver that is the threat.
Okay.
And they've got their windows closed and the music turned up in their car. So they don't hear any of that stuff.
Do you have confidence that these two steps would actually make a difference? Because part of what I was saying is my experience at the Cherry Hill intersection was that even with, well, they don't anymore have like a no turn. They don't have an old school sign hanging from the light from the cables saying no right on red. You can take a right on red at Cherry Hill, but I believe there's a no right on red arrow that comes on when the pedestrians are crossing, but a lot of those cars don't respect it anyway.
I think that comes down to an enforcement thing.
Exactly.
At that point, right? If we
but
get
if
the DOT to put in the signage, then it's up to our New Paltz constables to, target that as an enforcement zone.
Right.
And it would probably make sense to have that conversation at some point.
And then a related question is, could we, as we know, DOT moves glacially slow and often rejects our requests. They either reject our requests very fast, or else if they're receptive to doing what we want, it happens very, very slowly. But we could get presumably the New Paltz police to begin enforcing even with the existing signage, right? I mean, if you, Michael, are trying to walk or bike across that intersection and there's a vehicle that just turns right into you, regardless of whether there's a no right on red old school sign or a red arrow on the traffic signal, either way, it's still a violation. So should we also be pushing for, and this is a much easier thing to prevail on, is asking the police to do some periodic enforcement at those intersections?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, frequently it's cars actually pull into the crosswalk so that they can make their right on way. If there's any cross traffic, they'll pull and block that crosswalk, which they do along Main Street, throughout the town. But if there is a clear example where they have opportunity to enforce, because they're not allowed to block a crosswalk.
I think that would be a really good idea to approach the police, and especially as the warm up to spring here and more people using the route, it's important.
Yeah. So do any of you have a relationship with any of Chief Lucchese or any of the cops where you would want to contact them, or do you want me to as chair?
Well, I know Scott Butler for a long time, so he's our lieutenant, so I'd be happy to tell him.
Okay, do you want to make that request? And because in the past they've been super receptive about setting up, and they're happy to have a cop go and ticket people. They like that.
I can mention it too to Chief Lucchese. We've been talking because of the addition of the hybrid cars.
Hybrid.
Fleet.
Right.
So, yeah, I'll mention it as
well.
I think more is good.
Okay, great. And then it doesn't sound like there's any opposition, not that I would expect there to be, to your idea, Michael. Do you want to draft up a draft letter, or do you want me to, or what do you want to do about?
Yeah, I could put together a draft.
Okay.
And send it to you, by the end of the week.
Sure. And do we have clarity about who ought to be the recipient of that? There's sometimes some debates about who in DOT.
I would maybe go to Sandra Jobson. Start at the top.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, if Neil or Tim, if you have any other suggestions about others to CC, or if we should be going other than Sandra Jobson, then chime on in. Okay, then I just remembered.
Dan, sorry, I'll just weigh in. I was muted. I guess my only advice would be make sure you have your facts right about exactly what is happening or not happening at these intersections, so it doesn't get dismissed by just saying, well, they don't even have it described correctly with right turn or no turn. So make sure you get the facts exactly right, because that's the easiest thing. Is if there are mistakes, then it's just like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. Right? That's
Okay.
step one. Step two is make sure you're asking for something that you think they can give you. Right? If you're going to be asking them for brand new signals, it's not going to happen. Right? They just put the signals in.
The sign is cheaper.
You know, so if you think you can get away with reprogramming the signals to make it safer, or a sign, I would suggest go that route. I think that's your best chance of success. You know, it's always better to ask for something that you think they can give you versus asking for the moon. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And once you start circulating the letter around, we can, get down into the weeds more. But I would, as I've brought up a couple times, I would, probably say to try to add the Cherry Hill intersection to the list of ones that could use a no right on red sign, at least at a couple of the, maybe not at all four of the right on red's potentials, but certainly leaving Tops and going down the hill eastward. That's a major, almost, I've seen many near misses there because that's where the crosswalk is.
Maybe it's even going further and just having a sign as people exit the 290 or in the interstate that says New Paltz is a no turn on red town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is entrances to New York City. That's exactly what there's a sign there. It says there's no right on red in New York City.
Yeah, so that we can kind of
Hill, you got them all now.
So you can draft up a letter and
might...
we can examine, as a committee, we can kind of examine whether to go big with that or whether to pick out a few key intersections.
It might be an interesting way to frame the question is, I don't know of any other right on red lights in town.
Right.
So go through and look at all the lights and figure out which ones are right on red, which ones are not. And if it's only these lights that are right on red, you could make an argument to the DOT saying, look, it's confusing. Some are, some aren't. Let's make them all the same. We would prefer that they're all no right on red for safety for bike peds. That may be a way to couch the argument as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really good way to give leverage to the argument. Thank you.
And maybe even ask the town of Lloyd to join in on this, because they have right there at the intersection of 9 and 299, there's no right on red right there.
Mm-hmm. All right, I think we have enough to go on. So why don't we, work on drafting up a letter, and then we can continue that offline or online, not during meeting hours. I just wanted to throw in a quick update that in our last meeting, we had talked about some missing in-street crosswalk signs, and the one on the college, I wrote John Shoup, who's the head of facilities at the college, about the missing sign on Hill by near Old Main on campus, near the Old Main building and the quad. It's on Plattekill, where South Oakwood dead ends into the college. And John Shoup redirected me toward the police chief. And I wrote her and she said, we're going to order a new one. And then a few days ago, I went by and it's there. So that one in street crosswalk sign, right, with all these college students and faculty and staff crossing to get to and from the college, that's back up. I noticed that the one on Henry W. Du Bois down kind of near Church Street, above Church Street, is missing, but I'm assuming it's missing because it's winter and that it'll be reinstalled. I hope it's not stolen like these others. And then as far as the one on the River to Ridge Trail intersection at Springtown, Ariana Basco, the assistant to the mayor, wrote OSI, Open Space Institute, and indeed it appears it was stolen and there's plans to replace it, but that hasn't happened yet. OSI said it would probably be in the spring. So if any of you see any missing in-street crosswalk signs, let me know, and we can, follow up on getting those replaced. That wasn't even on my agenda for today. I forgot, but I just remembered it, so I thought I'd throw it in there for a minute or two. But we have about less than 15 minutes. The two other items that I had on the list for today were both from Judy. One of them was that Judy wrote a letter to the deputy executive of the county. The deputy, his name is Mark Ryder. He's the deputy to Pat Ryan, the county executive. I'm not sure if that was the right person to write it to, but I think that was a good person to write her letter to. And it was just a letter, basically nudging the county to sort of give us some accountability about where they're at in the process of this glacially slow process of delivering on the promise to build shoulders on all of 299. They've been built on the cheap from the Wallkill River from Gilded Otter to Butterville, but the exceptionally dangerous part is from Butterville to the Brow House at 4455.
Can I say
I don't have.
something? Can I say
Yes,
something?
it was you who wrote the letter. You jump
Well,
on in.
I just wanted to say that every time we've talked to them in the last couple of years, it's been that when are they going to start actually digging? It's always, well, they have all this preliminary stuff, including working on engineers' plans and including getting approvals from the people who live along 299. And all I'm asking is, where are they in that process? Because they keep saying that every few months. And, we made an offer that we would, that we have people in town who know the people who live along it, have friends there, they could help. And they said, oh, no, this is our job. So the letter was just to request what's happening, because they're surely dragging their feet. Anyway, I mean, I just hope it doesn't take another tragedy as happened to Gabby for them to, like the day after we were told, oh, I'm going to build this path. And by the way, 3 feet is not enough.
Right.
It's not enough. The current path, it's a pure excuse for a bike lane.
Right. So this is a ongoing frustration, with us, that we could spend hours banging our head against the wall about. But I think the approach of, writing the county officials and saying, we are frustrated with the pace. Can you tell us where you're at in the process?
Yeah.
Nudging them to speed it up and wait and hear what they say. And for now, I think that's, unless we want to do something, kind of get more confrontational and go, taking over the streets or something, as a committee, I think that's what we have at our disposal right now. Is it okay to switch to Judy's next item in the final 10 minutes, which is, sorry, first, I just remembered Kitty just wrote asking for a 30-second update. Why don't you, or no, Janelle did, sorry. Somehow I thought it said it was from Kitty. Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you do that, Janelle? 30-second update on TCI, if you want to remind people what TCI is.
Thank you. I think it was last month, I asked if the Bike Ped Committee could sign on in support of New York for Transportation and Climate Initiative. It's also called TCI. And you agreed to, and I was able to formally get that in under the deadline. So we, among many organizations all over New York, did sign in support of that. Unfortunately, only 3 New England states and Washington, D.C. are currently in the TCI. The governor did not choose to join it this time, but it's not over. I meet with the group monthly. We're continuing to talk about how we can move this forward. Next steps are to draft a model rule. Before it was just an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, but we're continuing to try to draft model language. So I'll keep you updated over time about TCI. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks. So Judy had had passed along a link to me about something I had never heard about before, but it's called Celebrate Trails Day. It's a website, railstotrails.org, all one blob of words, no dashes or anything, just railstotrails.org. And it's called Celebrate Trails Day. And it used to be called Opening Day for Trails, but now it's called Celebrate Trails Day. April 24th is the day that this organization is looking to have events, I assume all across the country. I don't know if it's global. So I don't know if you have anything more to say about it than that, Judy, but it was a nice idea for us to maybe be part of organizing
Okay.
a local presence of a bigger celebration.
Oh,
I just want to chime in and say that the National Rails to Trails Conservancy was instrumental in creating our Walker Valley Rail Trail, and we are going to be highlighted in their new book.
Cool.
Yeah, I just think it's an opportunity to be present for the population of New Paltz that doesn't ride a bike or walk very far. If we get some publicity saying, we're going to organize a group of people in April, you could still start something at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and get somewhere in the light. So, we should just think of a destination.
And I assume it would be just as fine to celebrate the River to Ridge Trail too, as it's not only limited to rail trails, is it?
Mm-hmm. No, it's not.
Yeah, because I imagine this seems like the kind of thing that you could potentially get some organizations, Open Space Institute, and the Wallkill, the rail trail organization, and have them use some of their own professional staff to drum up support from their membership lists, and maybe have some more organization of some creative events.
Yeah. Well, we just have to hope it's a nice day, because last year I think it snowed or whatever. But it just to sort of celebrate that we can get out on the roads again.
Hey, if it snows, we have a cross-country skiing celebrating Trails Trail Day. It's just got to be enough snow.
Always a nice day.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the next step with that? Do you think it is wise at this point to contact OSI and or the leaders of the rail trail right now to see if it's on their radar screen and they want to partner?
We could just say, think about it. Just focus on it. Just let them know that that's a day. It's been declared a day. I mean, they may know it anyway.
We could also maybe get something posted in the Hudson Valley One, in their blurbs at the beginning that, the New Paltz Bicycle and Pedestrian Subcommittee encourages you to celebrate National Trails Day.
Yeah.
Celebrate Trails Day.
And maybe co-sponsor a ride.
Yeah.
Like the Hudson Valley Rail Trail, or the walkway, in fact. Walkway to the ridge, River to Ridge.
Yeah. Right.
So this is Neil. I think we're still growing. We're still going to be under kind of COVID restrictions. I'm assuming by then. I'm pretty pessimistic with that. So I mean, kind of try to think creatively as a group. What sort of activity? It may not be an activity where you could have a big group ride or hike, but is there something that people could go on a hike, and we could have a sign-up sheet. People could sign a sheet and write what they like about it. We could have a book somewhere, or everyone could wear like a blue hat, or something. Something that people can be part of a group activity but still be alone. That's what we've been trying to encourage the community education. Think along those lines, and maybe make that sort of proposal.
Yeah, and in the
That's-
spirit
okay,
of not reinventing the wheel, I would hope that this organization, which is, you know, spawning events like this around the country, I'd hope that they'd have some ideas
Sure.
if they're
Mhm.
in charge of celebrating rail
This is-
trails.
This is the kind of thing that actually social media can be really great for. You encourage people to take a ride, shoot a little video, take a picture of themselves, and post it on our Facebook page, our New Paltz Bike Ped,
Right.
or on Expect to Bike, or on all of them, you know, in celebration of Celebrate Trails Day. You know,
Mark, it seems to me you could be our real leader with this. I mean, you are a live event, history person, so you know.
And you're free.
And I think Lou's pretty tech savvy too.
I actually I have
Maybe Shauna too.
I actually scored a pretty exciting job doing a TV show project that has me busy, and actually I think I'll probably be available that day, but I'm beginning to load in the show the week before that. So, but absolutely, I once we figure out what this is, I'd be happy to write the little blurb to go to Hudson Valley One and to post on our Facebook page, and
So what's the timeline? If the event's a long ways off, but we only meet once a month, what do we need to do before our next meeting? And is anybody game for taking a small piece of it?
Well, I do think we should be mindful of Neil's admonition to whatever we do to make it so that it's probably more virtual social media enjoyment of this. And so I'd be happy to take a stab at writing a blurb that we could post in Hudson Valley One. And to, Judy, was there any sort of, I guess I'll spend some time I'm on their website right now, the Rails to Trail on the
Well,
Celebrate.
it's been done before.
Yeah.
We're not inventing a wheel.
So I can spend a little bit of time with that, write a little blurb for Hudson Valley One, and everyone can brainstorm possible ideas. I mean, I do think it'd be great to encourage people to get out on that day, to either post a picture or a short video of themselves enjoying the day, and
with masks.
We can ride two abreast down the highways, because we're social distancing 6 feet apart. And I'm
That's
sorry,
right.
we're taking up the whole lane.
With a
Right.
pool noodle between us to show what's.
I mean,
That's right.
people could post like, what do the trails mean to you?
Sure.
Anything like that. I mean, I've had multiple people tell me that having the ability to get out on the local trails made all the difference to them over the last 10 months.
Oh, without a doubt, I can
They have, yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, let people kind of tell us that.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think that would be pretty powerful. And it builds advocacy
Yeah.
for exactly what you guys want.
I think
better
you
trails.
may be really onto it there, Neil, because maybe they're even more especially important to us in this time when we need something. And I know for one, like Dan said, and Mike said, I've spent a lot of time on the mountain bike in the last year, more than probably any other year of my life, and it has been therapeutic, big time. So
Absolutely.
maybe that's the angle to try and explore is to try and tie it to the whole COVID experience and our own.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Being timekeeper, we are at 8:30, and so some of you may have things to do, places to be. I got to get my 8-year-old to sleep. So this was a wonderful meeting with lots of smiles and uplifting, and a little bit of a brawl, which is never boring. So great to have you all. Keep recruiting other people if there's any others that you think might be interested. And we can keep some of this going through communication between now and our next meeting in late fourth Monday of every single month through November. We don't meet in December traditionally, I believe. So let's call that a day. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Dan.
I'll try to be more punctual. Judy's been gently nudging me. I'll try to be more punctual about getting the minutes in the next few days instead of a few days before the next meeting. But my apologies in advance if I fall short on that. And thanks once again to Shauna for joining in. Hope we see you again, and good to see you again, Lou and Kitty and Tim and Neil and everybody other than our usual crew.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
I will sign off.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Wait, you're going to be on a panel this coming week, is that right?
What?
Oh, right. Me?
Yeah. Why don't you put in an ad here?
Oh, right. So tomorrow at 4:30, the college is having a panel called Insurrection, Impeachment, and Inauguration, kind of about the crazy revolutionary couple of weeks we've been in. And there'll be 6 of us presenting very briefly to try to not be too unwieldy with the number of panelists. And then attendees can submit questions or commentary via chat. Yeah, it's kind of the political science department and beyond trying to weigh in with some analysis about this huge eventful
How do we access?
last month. How do you access it? Shoot me an email if you can't find it. I posted it on Facebook.
Yeah, I think I saw your Facebook post. So.
I so far only posted it to friends, but I'm going to post it to the public. Just shoot me a message and I can send you the link. It's a WebEx link with a password to attend. It's at 4:30 tomorrow. Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. I'm not so good at remembering to toot my horn and with other hats on. All right, I got to sign off. Thank you all. So I'm going to end the meeting and
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for
you.
facilitating. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.
Good night, all.
Good night. Ending meeting.